And again, like, nobody's seen anything like this. I've been in policing for over 30 years. We've never seen this. And again, unfortunately, this is the new world order, and we're very concerned about it.
Here in the studio with me is CTV's public safety analyst Chris Lewis with more on this situation, unprecedented. Your read on this, Chris, as you're following it.
Oh, we've been saying for years, probably you and I together talking about these issues, that it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And today was the day. Awful tragedy. We've seen it in Europe, as you were saying earlier, and it's such an easy way to hurt people and kill people, and there's no real way to defend against it. So, tragically, it's really destroyed one of the safest cities in all of North America. And the city of Toronto.
When you heard this, Chris, when word came out that this had happened, and of course, in the beginning, we don't know what's going on. We're wondering, is it a van in which somebody had a medical condition and they drove up onto the sidewalk? Was it an accident? Now we're seeing 9 people dead. And what does that say to you?
Well, there's no doubt it was a planned, very methodical attempt to kill a pile of people. And a successful one. So what it comes down to now, there's no doubt it's a terrorist act of some sort. What it comes down to is, was someone radicalized, acting on their own, or were they directed by some other facet within a terrorist organization? It's a playbook ISIS type attack, as we've seen in other countries. But was this person actually in communication with somebody from ISIS, or was it somebody who just got wrapped up in this ideology and subsequently decided to take on this act on his own? And the investigation will soon show that. I'm surprised no one's taken the credit for it yet, in terms of ISIS normally takes credit for everything bad that happens in the world. I'm sure we will see somebody come forward at some point and say that they're responsible as a group, but whether or not the individual had ever actually been directed is another thing. The RCMP and CSIS will quickly know whether the individual that rented the vehicle and the individual that drove the vehicle, which may or may not be the same person, were on their radar at all for any reason. Did they come up in some other intelligence file? Did they have information on such a person? And then, of course, the second guessing will start. Should he have been on somebody's radar, and what should they have done? You can't follow everybody 24/7. So they have to prioritize and do their best. And what really strikes me today more than anything, besides the horrendous tragedy of it, is the response. Not only from emergency services, the very heroic actions by a Toronto police officer to take that individual into custody, but people from the city of Toronto just coming forward, trying to help, giving CPR. I mean, it just shows you what a wonderful city this is and how it comes together in such a horrendous situation.
And let me ask you as well, you touched on CSIS, Canada's Spy Agency Intelligence Service, along with the RCMP. We still know that this is an investigation that's being headed up at this point anyway by the Toronto Police Force. That may change given the severity now, 9 people dead, but certainly they are now in liaison with the RCMP and CSIS, because they do have that person in custody. And we're showing the video of this man here, this video sent in by an anonymous viewer to CTV, and you see the man with his arm raised and the Toronto Police Force member there engaging, and eventually an arrest is made. The man is on the sidewalk at one point, and there we go, being handcuffed as well. So the Toronto Police now have him in custody. They'll be speaking to him, obviously, interrogating him, and no doubt the RCMP and CSIS will be part of this effort to figure out who he is and what might have led him to do this.
Exactly. And so who he is and what contacts he may have or how he has or hasn't come up in intelligence files will tell the tale somewhat. What did he say when he was arrested? What does he say when he's interrogated? There's a whole pile of factors there, dominoes that need to fall before they make a firm determination. Was this a deliberate act based on religion? Was it in fact a terrorist act? If not, either way, it's the biggest mass murder we have in recent memory. And not to mention 16 injured on top of 9 dead.
And this is why it's being called unprecedented.
Exactly.
We've never seen something like this in our country before.
We've seen criminal acts like 8 bikers killed in southwestern Ontario, but not 16 injured. Not innocent members of the public. There were people involved in a dangerous lifestyle, not just people out for lunch on a nice day. So it certainly changes everything in terms of the impact it has on the community.
You mentioned what happened in Europe, and this is exactly what came to mind when we were getting ready, and this story started to come in, and we started to realize the significance now and the severity, because of course there were attacks in Barcelona and in France and in the UK and Sweden and Germany, and on it goes as well, in which vehicles were weaponized, Chris, because the so-called barrier to entry is so low when it comes to getting in a car or a truck or a van in this case.
That's right. We can say we're going to ban assault rifles. We can say we're going to ban large magazines and a pile of things around firearms. But how do you stop people from driving vehicles, 4,000-pound missiles, from jumping up in a curb and hitting an immediate number of people or driving up the sidewalk? as this individual did for 2.5 kilometers and killing numerous people. You just can't prevent against all of that. And if we could snap our fingers or prevent against that, what would be next? There'd be some other way of hurting people. So as soon as we solidify certain areas, whether it be airports or whatever, other things emerge. It's a morphing phenomena. The terrorism, they just sort out new ways to hurt people.
How big is this investigation going to be based on all of your expertise with law enforcement, Chris, over the years?
Well, it's huge. I mean, from a crime scene perspective alone, forensically, you got 2.5 miles of crime scene. So then you've got cameras in all those places along the way, all the businesses.
Right, the CCTV cameras,
That's right. They'll be interviewing hundreds of witnesses that saw something or were involved in some way. And then all the investigation around who were the individual or individuals involved, because we still don't know who rented, who drove, and was there someone else in that vehicle? We don't know yet. And then all the background and the connections on that. They'll be into computers, they'll be into cell phones, they'll be kicking doors into residences over time. So there's a lot of on-the-scene stuff to do, which would happen in any large tragedy, whether it was criminal or not, just like a bad crash in the 400. And then the investigative piece is just huge on this. So there's a lot of things to happen over the coming days. But Toronto's one of the best police departments in the world, supported by OPP, RCMP, and all part of that integrated national security team. The
biggest
is here.
Biggest police department, obviously, in our country by far. You mentioned one other thing that I'm curious about too, which is the so-called digital footprints now, right. The fingerprints related to this individual. And again, we want to be careful. We don't know what the motivation was yet.
That's a very good point.
But that is going to be a key part of this nowadays because of smartphones and because of social media and because of emails and text messages and phone calls as well.
That's right. If this individual, if it's just the one involved, doesn't come up in any radar with the RCMP or CSIS or local police in any way related to some sort of terrorism ideology, what will the footprint show? Who was he talking to? Who was he communicating with? What websites was he visiting? What emails was he sending and getting from who? And that will paint a picture one way or another, whether just some person that was suffering from some mental health issue that glommed onto the terrorist ideology we've seen across the world, or were they actively involved with the terrorist group or people that are involved in terrorism? How did that all come to be? Either way, it's a horrendous tragedy. It's just sorting out the motivation from here, and a large murder for Toronto to investigate, regardless of the motivation.
Chris Lewis here in studio with us, CTV public safety analyst. Good to have you with us, Chris.
Always a pleasure, Todd.
An unprecedented situation in our country. 9 people confirmed to have been killed in this incident that happened in Toronto now 4 hours ago at around 1:30 Eastern in North York. Of course, this story now rippling across the city and across the country and around the world, by the way, as word spreads of what happened in the city of Toronto. CTV's Austin Delaney is standing by live for us. He is outside of Maple Leaf Square tonight because there is a big hockey game underway. What can you tell us, Austin, where you are about security right now?
Well, Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment issued a news release a short time ago saying that there is increased security around the ACC as well as inside. You know, there's about 20,000 people coming down here. That's a pretty big target if you're planning on doing something like
Jive Bunny reporting 24/7, and this is the worst incident that it has ever happened in Toronto.
Take a look at the barriers that are out. These are concrete barriers. They're here all the time.